Section 12.2, number 1, 2a squared over 3b times 9a squared over 8b squared. Here we've got monomials, all one term on top and bottom of both fractions. With monomials, you can just multiply across. And then we can reduce if anything reduces. So here, if we multiply across 2 times 9, we get 18. A squared times a squared is a to the 4th. On bottom, 3 times 8. And then b, remember there's a invisible 1 on that b. So b to the 1st and b to the 2nd ends up multiplying to be b to the 3rd. We're just adding those exponents. And with monomials, so one term on top, one term on bottom, we can reduce the parts of them. So we can reduce the 18 and the 24 by 6. So this ends up being, if we reduce 18 by 6, you get 3. Reduce 24 by 6 and we get 4. A to the 4th, b to the 3rd. Next up, number 2, y squared minus 9 over 18 divided by y plus 3 squared over 6. So a couple things I want to point out here. On the tops of both of these, we've got binomials. So not going to follow the same method that we did on number 1. Some other things to point out. Here we've got the difference of squares. Difference of squares. Hopefully you're getting to the point where you notice that y squared minus 9, maybe y squared minus 25, y squared minus 100. Difference is subtraction, so a minus in between two squares. And the formula for that, a minus b, a plus b. As long as you can identify what the square roots are, then that's square root of y squared is y. Square root of 9 is 3, so that's your a and your b. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that if we're dividing fractions, so we've got the first fraction divided by the second fraction, what we're going to do is flip the second fraction and multiply. So the first problem that we looked at had a multiplication sign in the middle, so we didn't flip that second fraction. This one has a division sign in the middle, so we are going to flip the second fraction. So let's see. So we've got, I'll go ahead and leave this as it is. First fraction is going to stay the same. Going to multiply now 6 on top, y plus 3 squared on the bottom. And something else that you'll do here, like I said, this is the difference of squares. So a in this case is going to be equal to y. B in this case, the square root of 9 is going to be 3. So when we factor that, let's see, I'll do this in white. That's going to be y minus 3. In other words, a minus b, and then a plus b. On the bottom, I'm going to leave the 18 alone. Any of the, so multiplying 6, and then the y plus 3 squared. This is one of the simpler ones that we'll have to do anything with. If you've got a binomial squared, that just means you're taking it times itself. So we can write that as y plus 3 times y plus 3. It's just the same as y plus 3 squared. And once you've got that, hopefully you can see some things that we can simplify. If you've got y plus 3 and y plus 3, one on top, one on bottom, we can go ahead and cancel those. Be careful you don't cancel the y's here, because that y, this y minus 3 on the left, that's all one thing. Y minus 3 only cancels with y minus 3. So we can't take these y's and reduce them. We can't take the 3's and reduce them. The 6 and the 18, though, on the other hand, those aren't binomials. Those are monomials. So we can go ahead and reduce those. The 6 and the 18 we can reduce by 6. 6 goes into 6 one time. 6 goes into 18 3 times. And once you've done all that simplifying, then we just look at what we've got on top. When we multiply across, so we've got y minus 3 and that 1. So y minus 3 times 1 is just y minus 3. On the bottom, we've got 3 and then this y plus 3. I'm just going to butt those up against each other since they are multiplying. Three times the y plus 3. And again, don't cancel the y's, don't cancel the 3's. Y minus 3 only cancels with y minus 3. Y plus 3 only cancels with y plus 3. Number 3, 8s minus s squared over 2t divided by 4 times s squared minus 64 over 3t squared. So a couple of things that came up before. We've got a division symbol, so make sure you're going to flip the second fraction and multiply. Another thing, s squared minus 64, that's the difference of squares. Difference because it's got a minus. S squared is a square, 64 is a square. And I'll go ahead and write what a is. A is the square root of s squared, so s. B is the square root of 64, which is 8. So we're going to have a minus b, a plus b. Factor binomials or trinomials. That's what we did with the difference of squares, the a minus b, a plus b. That's factoring. So a few different things to keep in mind here. I'm going to go ahead and factor that first one here. It's not the difference of squares. S squared is a square, but 8s isn't. So this is not the difference of squares. We do have an s that we can take out, though. And then you want to write what's left. If we take s out of 8s, that leaves 8. And if we take s out of s squared, that just leaves another s. Not doing anything with that monomial on the bottom yet. We've got that division, so we're going to change that to multiplication and flip the second fraction. So 3t squared on the top. On the bottom, 4, and then you don't necessarily have to do it at this step, but I'm going to go ahead and factor that s squared minus 64. That's going to be s minus 8, s plus 8. All right, and then a couple things from there. We've got, if we look at just the monomials, with the monomials, this one and this one, you can cancel little individual pieces if the 3 and the 2, top and bottom, reduced. 3 and 2 don't have anything in common, but t squared and t, we can cancel one of those t's. And then I'll just cancel the 2, and we'll just make it 1t. Another thing, we talked about this in class, but let me write it on the side here. 8 minus s and s minus 8. They're identical except the signs are different. The 8 on top is positive. The 8 on bottom is negative. The s, this should be an s, on top is negative. The s on bottom is positive. So they're identical except for the signs. And what they end up equaling is -1. If it were 8 over, if they were exactly the same, s minus 8, s minus 8, that's the same as 1. But if the signs are different, that's the same as -1. Okay, so all that to point out that we do have 8 minus s on top, and we've got s minus 8 on the bottom. And those two we can cancel out as long as we've got a -1 that we add in there somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and put it next to the s. We're multiplying those. Okay, so we've got s times -1. On the bottom, we just have that t. On the right, we've got 3, and then just the 1 t left over. On the bottom, we've got 4, and then s plus 8. Okay, so the 8 minus s is gone, the s minus 8 is gone, and we just multiplied a -1 somewhere on top or bottom. Then we can go ahead and multiply straight across. Be careful, you know, that thing I mentioned before about having an s and then an s plus 8. Be careful you don't cancel those s's. The s plus 8 only cancels with s plus 8, or 8 minus s if you want to make a -1 out of it. But otherwise, on top, -s times 3t, it's -3. We typically put the number out front when you're multiplying these. You could write it as -s and then 3t. That wouldn't be wrong. But typically the number goes out front, and then the variables, when they're multiplied, are in alphabetical order. Then on bottom, multiplying the 2 and the 4 and the s plus 8. All right, last example, 4s squared plus 3s minus 10 over s divided by s squared plus 10s plus 16 over st. So again, we're going to factor any binomials or trinomials. And if we, well, let's start by flipping the fraction here since we are dividing. So I'm just going to rewrite the whole thing just how it is. Except we're going to multiply and flip the second. So the s on the bottom, the st on the top, those are monomials. So I'm going to leave those alone for now. But this trinomial on the top left, the trinomial on the bottom right, I'm going to go ahead and factor those. So I'll start with the bottom right since that's the simpler of the two. If you've got s squared at the front, you know it's going to factor into 2 parentheses with s at the front of those. We've got a plus and a plus, which is nice as opposed to over here where we've got a plus and a minus. If you've got 2 pluses, then you know it's going to factor into 2 pluses. And then we need 2 things at the end of both of those that multiply to be 16 and add to 10. So not a whole lot of things that multiply to be 16. Hopefully 8 and 2 occurs to you. Positive 8, positive 2. Multiply to be 16, add to 10. So I'll go ahead and put a line through this. This one you might do on scratch paper, just because it could be a little bit lengthier and you might clutter up the page here if you try to do it right next to it. So 4s squared plus 3s minus 5. Okay. And so at this point, if you can cancel something, you'll want to do that. We've got an s plus 2. Let me do a different color here. So s plus 2 on top, s plus 2 on the bottom, those cancel. And then also with the monomials, if one's on top, one's on bottom, if they have individual pieces that cancel, you can go ahead and do that. So 1s, 1s. And it can get a little bit messy, so be careful what you write on the following step. So the only thing left on the top left was 4s minus 5 times the t on the right. You can put that t out front if you want. Then on bottom, the bottom left s was gone. S plus 8 is the only thing that was left on the right. Be careful with those s's that you never confuse them with a 5. I usually try to make my 5 kind of rigid at the top so it's never confused with an s. And just to reiterate, we do have an s down below and an s up top, but this binomial 4s minus 5 only cancels with 4s minus 5. Same with the s plus 8, only cancels with s plus 8. 10. Okay, so since this doesn't start with just a 1s squared or no coefficient in front of s squared, we're going to do the AC method, where we multiply the 4 and the negative 10, the a. These trinomials you can always think of as a, b, and c. So here we're just multiplying a, the first one, and c, the third one. Make sure you include their signs. So 4 times negative 10 is negative 40. And then what we're doing here is we're going to replace the middle term with a pair of factors of negative 40 that could multiply to be, or that could add to be 3. So 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3 doesn't go into 40, 4 and 10, 5 and 8, 6 doesn't go into 40, 7 doesn't go into 40, and then we're back up to 8. So that's everything. Looking for a pair we can make 3 out of. 5 and 8 you can make 3 out of if the smaller number is negative. So negative 5 times 8 makes negative 40. And negative 5 plus 8 gives you positive 3. You can plug these numbers in however you want. I'm going to put the 8 with the 4 though, just because I know that they have a common factor of 4, and I'm going to want to factor this here in a minute. So the 8 goes first, the minus 5, and this is 5s. So now in the middle we've got 8s minus 5s, which is still 3s. We've just rewritten it. And then we're going to factor by grouping. So we're going to group off these first two, group off the second two, or the second pair, and then factor from there. So this first pair, 4 and 8, we can factor out of 4, and they both have an s we can take out. And then we'll write what's left. So if you take 4s out of 4s squared, that just leaves 1s. If you take 4 out of 8, that leaves 2, and we took the other s out. With the negative 5s minus 10, we'll take out a negative 5 on that one. And then that leaves s plus 2. And then, just as long as you've got this common binomial, s plus 2, you can take that out of both, and then you're left with 4s minus 5 in your second parenthesis. So a bit of work, and then try not to lose track of the fact that we only did that so that we could go back and then factor that top left side of that expression. So s plus 2